December 31st, 2003. A German car salesman boards a bus for a 5-day vacation, but he never arrives. Masked men drag him onto an unmarked plane. They beat him, strip him naked, and force a sedative into his rectum while photographing everything. He doesn't know why. 8 hours later, he lands in Afghanistan, chained to a concrete floor in total darkness. For 149 days, they blast Eminem at deafening volume. They feed him 500 calories. His teeth loosen. His hair falls out in clumps. They slam his shoulders into walls until he loses count. They shove tubes down his throat when he tries to starve himself to death. But here's where it gets worse. Within weeks, the CIA knew they had the wrong man. A single typo, one vowel in a database. They didn't release him. They couldn't admit the mistake. So they kept torturing an innocent father of 6. And the most insane part, he sued the CIA for kidnapping. The US government's response? They didn't deny it. They said admitting it was illegal. The man who ordered his capture got promoted. The officer who froze another prisoner to death in that same facility got a $2,500 bonus. Khalid El-Masri got nothing but nightmares. How does the CIA erase an innocent man and call it classified? What happened to the others who never made it out? Khaled El-Masri wasn't running from anything when he boarded that bus in Ulm, Germany. The 41-year-old car salesman had fought with his wife about household bills. He needed space to think and bought a €140 ticket to Macedonia for a 5-day vacation. He packed one small bag, 2 changes of clothes, his German passport, and €563 in cash. The passport photo showed a Lebanese-born German citizen who'd lived in Ulm since 1985, ran a used car lot, and attended the local mosque on Fridays. Nothing more. The Macedonian border database didn't care about context. At 3:10 a.m., when the guard typed El Masri into the system, it triggered an Interpol alert installed after 9/11. The system couldn't distinguish Arabic transliterations, Khaled from Khalid, El from Al. To the computer, to the guard, to the chain of command about to swallow an innocent man whole, those differences meant nothing. The interrogation room in Tabanovce measured 8 feet by 10 feet, no windows and just one fluorescent bulb. For the first 3 hours, El-Masri answered the same questions in broken English and German. Where did you travel in 1999? He'd visited Mecca for pilgrimage. Who paid for the trip? His own savings. Why Macedonia? Cheap vacation and mountain air. But the officers wrote nothing down. At 6:30 a.m., they loaded him into an unmarked van. The Skopski Merak Hotel sat on the outskirts of Skopje, a 3-story concrete block the Macedonian intelligence service used for unofficial detentions. Room 13 had reinforced locks, no telephone, and the windows painted black. El-Masri's guards worked 8-hour shifts. 2 men who spoke no German communicated through hand gestures. They brought bread and cheese twice daily and escorted him to a bathroom down the hall. No lawyer, no consul, and no explanation. On day 3, the interrogators change. 3 men in suits who speak accented English appear. They know details. His employment history at Daimler-Benz from 1985 to 1993. His marriage to Aisha in 1996, and the names of his 6 children. They show him photocopies, his passport photo beside a grainy image of someone else. This is you in Afghanistan, they insist. But El-Masri had never been to Afghanistan, and they don't believe him. What El-Masri can't see 7 time zones away, in the counterterrorism center at CIA headquarters, an analyst named Alfreda Bukowski was building a case from fragments. Bukowski, who colleagues call the Queen of Torture, connects El-Masri's name to a Hamburg cell linked to 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta. Her evidence is the name similarity, his Lebanese origin, and his mosque attendance. No phone intercepts, no financial transfers, and no photographs. Just pattern recognition and what she later calls a hunch. On January 12, 2004, she signs the rendition order. 1 signature, 1 hunch. That's all it takes to make a man disappear. Macedonia's intelligence service had held El-Masri for 23 days when the Americans arrived on January 23, 2004. His guards suddenly seemed nervous, checking their watches. They handed him his passport, his wallet with the 563 euros still inside, even his wedding ring. "You're going home," one said in English. They drove him through Skopje's empty streets toward what he thought was the German embassy, but the van stopped at the airport instead. El Masri saw the plane first, a Boeing 737 with no airline markings and tail number N313P. Then he saw the men, 7 figures in black, faces covered by balaclavas. They moved in formation, surrounding him before he could process what was happening. The beatings started immediately. Fists to his stomach, boots to his legs. When he tried to protect his head, they grabbed his arms and wrenched them behind his back. Someone produced medical scissors, began cutting through his jacket, his sweater, and his undershirt. The metal was cold against his skin. The most degrading moment came when they cut away his underwear. El Masri, a devout Muslim who prayed 5 times daily, stood naked on the tarmac while strangers photographed him with a digital camera. They bent him over. A gloved hand forced a suppository into his rectum. The drug, later identified as a powerful sedative, made his legs buckle within minutes. They dressed him in a diaper, then a blue tracksuit. The hood came last, cutting off his last glimpse of Macedonia. Inside N313P, they chained him to the cabin floor. His wrists and ankles were shackled to D-rings bolted into the aircraft's frame. The engines screamed to life. As the plane lifted off at 8:46 p.m., one American leaned down, pulled back the hood enough to speak directly into El Masri's ear. "You are now in American custody. We can do with you whatever we want. No one will know where you are." The flight lasted 8 hours and 38 minutes. El Masri counted, fighting the sedatives and forcing himself to track time. The plane refueled once. He heard fuel trucks, felt the aircraft rock as they connected. His mouth went dry from the drugs. His shoulders burned from the stress position. When he asked for water, no one responded. When the plane finally descended, outside the tiny window, he glimpsed through his hood's fabric, mountains covered in snow, Afghanistan. He was about to enter a building where prisoners didn't come out the same. Some didn't come out at all. What does the CIA do to a man when they're convinced he's a terrorist, but he has nothing to confess? And what happens when an interrogator finally admits they have the wrong person, but headquarters refuses to let him go? The salt pit squatted in an industrial district 10 miles northeast of Kabul, inside an abandoned brick factory the CIA had leased in November 2002. From the outside, it looked like rubble, collapsed walls and rusted machinery. But beneath the factory floor, the CIA had built something else entirely. A maze of basement cells carved into the earth, each one sealed with a steel door 3 inches thick. No windows and no natural light. Sound-dampening concrete that swallowed screams. Officially designated the detention site Cobalt, it held 24 prisoners in what a CIA inspector would later call the most inhumane facility in the entire detention program. The temperature inside never rose above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, even in summer. In January, water froze in the pipes. El Masri's cell measured 6 feet by 8 feet. Concrete floor, concrete walls, and no furniture. A bucket in the corner for waste. Total darkness. Not dim light and no shadows, but the complete absence of light that makes you touch your eyes to confirm they're open. The CIA called this learned helplessness. Prisoners called it being buried alive. His chains, 14 pounds of steel, connected his ankles to a ring in the floor, with just enough slack to reach the bucket. The chain length was deliberate, calculated to prevent standing fully upright. After 3 days, El Masri's back seized with spasms that never fully went away. The first interrogation began 12 hours after arrival. 4 men entered his cell with flashlights that burned his dark-adapted eyes. They spoke American English. The questions came rapid fire. Where did you train? Who sent you? What was your target? El Masri repeated what he'd told the Macedonians. Wrong person, wrong name, and he is just a car salesman from Germany. The lead interrogator, El Masri could tell by his voice, grew frustrated. We know you're lying. We have proof. You were in Jalalabad in 2000. El Masri had been selling used BMWs in Ulm in 2000. He had receipts, tax records, and even witnesses, but none of that mattered here. When words failed, they tried pain. The technique was called walling, slamming a prisoner's shoulders against a specially designed flexible wall that amplified impact without leaving marks. El Masri lost count after the 20th impact. Then came stress positions, arms shackled above his head, forced to stand on his toes for hours. When his legs gave out, the chains caught his weight, nearly dislocating both shoulders. The pain was designed to break him. But El Masri had nothing to confess. The daily routine at Cobalt never varied. Metal music blasted through speakers 20 hours per day, Eminem's Kim on repeat. The same 3-minute track about murder playing continuously. The volume made conversation impossible, sleep difficult, and thinking pure agony. Meals arrived once daily, a handful of rice, a piece of bread, and sometimes a potato. The portions totaled roughly 500 calories. Within 2 weeks, El Masri's ribs showed through his skin. February brought a new interrogator, someone the guards called the boss. This man spoke German with a Berlin accent. He knew details the others didn't. El Masri's childhood in Kuwait, his mother's maiden name, and the elementary school his daughter attended. But he also knew something else. During their 3rd session, the boss admitted it. "We know you're not the man we want, but you're here now." That creates complications. The CIA had a problem. Releasing El Masri meant admitting a mistake. Keeping him meant holding an innocent man. They'd already decided which was worse. The boss promised to work on a solution. That was February 20th, and El Masri wouldn't see him again for 6 weeks. By March, El Masri had lost 60 pounds. His teeth loosened from malnutrition. Hair fell out in clumps when he ran his fingers through it. Other prisoners, he could hear them through the walls during quiet periods, screamed in Arabic and Pashto, languages he didn't recognize. One man, in the cell beside his, repeatedly banged his head against the concrete. The sound, a wet thud, over and over, lasted for hours, then silence. Guards removed the body the next morning. El Masri decided to die, not suicide. His faith forbade that, but refusal. On March 11th, he stopped eating. The bread piled up in the corner, and for 6 days, he consumed only water. On day 7, guards noticed the untouched food. On day 8, 4 men in medical scrubs entered his cell. They held him down, forced a tube through his nose into his stomach. The feeding hurt worse than the beatings, acid burning up his throat, his nose bleeding, vomit and formula mixing on the concrete. They did this twice daily for 37 days. April 10th, 2004. The boss returned with news. Headquarters has made a decision. In that moment, El Masri assumed execution. Instead, the boss said, "You're going home, maybe, if you cooperate." The condition is absolute silence. Never speak about Cobalt, never mention the CIA, and never pursue legal action. Sign this document, 8 pages in English El Masri couldn't read, and you might see Germany again. El Masri signed. What choice did he have? The preparation took 6 more weeks. They fattened him up, real meals, medical treatment, even vitamins. They couldn't return a skeleton to Germany without raising questions. His weight climbed from 132 pounds back to 175. They gave him a haircut, new clothes, even allowed him to shower with soap. The transformation was cosmetic, external. Inside, the damage was permanent. May 28th, 2004. Guards entered El Masri's cell for the last time. New handcuffs, American model, not the Soviet-era ones Cobalt used. A clean hood, cotton, not the burlap that left fibers in your mouth. They led him through corridors he'd never seen, past doorways where other prisoners watched through feeding slots. Outside, Kabul's night air hit him like memory itself. Wind, car exhaust, life continuing beyond concrete walls. El Masri noticed something strange. The CIA handlers escorting him seemed nervous, jumpy. One kept checking the road behind them. They weren't worried about him escaping. They were worried about something else entirely. Why won't the CIA release El Masri in Germany where his family is waiting? And after 5 months of torture for a crime he didn't commit, will he finally make it home? The Gulfstream Fi jet that carried El Masri from Kabul landed at Tirana International Airport, Albania, at 5:30 a.m. on May 29, 2004. Not Germany. That would create records and require explanations. Albania asked fewer questions. The CIA team drove him 3 hours north toward the Serbian border, past Kukës, into mountains where cell phones found no signal. They stopped on a dirt road near the village of Kalit, 18 miles from anywhere. The senior CIA officer, El Masri, recognized his voice from Cobalt, handed him 14,000 euros in cash, his German passport, and a white t-shirt that read Munich 2003 in English. "Walk straight down this road," the officer said. "Don't look back and don't turn around, just walk." They drove away, leaving El Masri standing alone on a mountain road at 8:47 a.m., 5 months and 1 week after he'd boarded a bus for a simple vacation. El Masri walked for 3 hours before meeting Albanian border guards. They found his story impossible, a German citizen claiming CIA kidnapping, carrying 14,000 euros and appearing from nowhere. They detained him in Tirana for 18 hours while checking his identity. The German embassy confirmed, yes, this was their missing citizen. Yes, his family had filed reports. No, they had no explanation for his appearance in Albania. The Lufthansa flight from Tirana to Frankfurt on May 29th carried 93 passengers. One of them is a ghost, a man who'd been erased from existence, then awkwardly reinserted into life. El Masri stared out the window at Europe passing below. Normal cities full of normal people living normal lives where intelligence agencies didn't chain you to concrete floors. When the pilot announced descent into Frankfurt, El Masri broke down crying. Frankfurt airport immigration took 4 minutes. The officer scanned his passport, looked up and scanned again. "Mr. El Masri, where have you been since January?" The computer showed no exit from Germany and no entry anywhere else. El Masri said, "Afghanistan." The officer's eyebrows rose. Business or pleasure? El Masri almost laughed. The absurdity of the question, the impossibility of the truth. "Visiting friends," he said. The officer stamped his passport. The train to Ulm took 3 hours and 14 minutes. El Masri had memorized his apartment building's entry code, 4779. He climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on his own door, but it got no answer. Used his key and it still worked. Inside there were empty rooms, no furniture, no clothes and no toys, just marks on the walls where pictures had hung, a note on the kitchen counter in Aisha's handwriting. "I waited. I couldn't wait anymore. We're with my family." Aisha had taken the children to Lebanon 6 weeks earlier. The landlord threatened eviction, 5 months of missed rent. Her husband's employer had terminated his position after 3 weeks' absence without notice. The police told her missing persons usually meant voluntary disappearance. She'd sold everything valuable, borrowed money from relatives, and finally given up. How do you explain to 6 children that their father simply vanished? You don't. You just leave. El Masri called Lebanon from a payphone. His home line was disconnected. Aisha answered on the 7th ring. For 13 seconds, neither spoke. Then she said, "Khaled?" He said, "I'm home." She said, "Where were you?" He couldn't answer. Not on an international line, probably monitored. "I'll explain when you return. Please come back." She said she'd think about it. Then the line went dead. The reunion happened 2 weeks later at Frankfurt Airport. Aisha had aged years in 5 months. The children, ages 2 to 12, stared at their father like a stranger. His youngest son, Ayub, hid behind his mother's legs. El Masri knelt down, opened his arms. None of them moved. Finally, his oldest daughter, Maria, stepped forward. "Papa?" she said. "Where did you go?" He held her while she cried, unable to explain that he'd never left, not voluntarily, that every day in that darkness he'd thought of them. The New York Times published an investigation on May 31st, 2005, 1 year later after El Masri's release. The headline, CIA expanding terror battle under guise of charter flights. Buried in paragraph 14, the story of a German citizen mistakenly rendered to Afghanistan. No name, they protected their source, but enough details that German intelligence knew immediately who it meant. Within hours, El-Masri's phone rang. German federal police wanted to talk. The truth was about to collide with the most powerful secrecy apparatus on Earth. What happens when an innocent man sues the CIA in open court for kidnapping and torture? And when German prosecutors issue arrest warrants for American agents, will the US let its own operatives face justice? El-Masri didn't want money. He wanted acknowledgement, an apology, assurance it wouldn't happen to someone else. In December 2005, he sued the CIA in American federal court. The government's response wasn't a denial. It was worse. They invoked the state secrets privilege, a Cold War doctrine that lets the government kill any lawsuit by claiming national security. The argument was almost absurd. The CIA couldn't confirm or deny kidnapping El-Masri because confirming it would be a state secret. They weren't saying he was lying. They were saying that admitting the truth was illegal. The judge struggled with the paradox. How can there be justice if the facts of injustice are secret? The government's answer was simple. Sometimes there can't be. National security trumps individual rights. The case was dismissed, appeals failed, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it. Not because El-Masri was wrong, but because proving he was right would embarrass the CIA. German prosecutors had no such restrictions. Through meticulous detective work, flight records, hotel receipts, and cell phone logs, they identified 13 CIA operatives involved in El-Masri's rendition. They issued arrest warrants. The names were aliases, but attached to real passport photos, real credit cards, and real digital footprints. America pressured Germany to drop the case. The message was clear. Choose between justice for one man or continued intelligence cooperation. Germany chose cooperation. The warrants remained active, but unenforced. The kidnappers walked free. December 13, 2012 brought vindication from an unexpected source. The European Court of Human Rights ruled unanimously. Macedonia had violated El-Masri's rights by transferring him to CIA custody. The court's 90-page opinion used the word torture 23 times. It awarded El-Masri 60,000 euros, not from America, but from Macedonia. The first legal acknowledgement, from any court anywhere, that America's rendition program constituted torture. The CIA panicked. When the Senate Intelligence Committee investigated CIA torture in 2014, internal emails showed the fear at Langley. One senior official wrote, "If the El-Masri story gets full exposure, we're done. This is the one that proves we knew we had the wrong guy and kept him anyway." December 9, 2014. The Senate released its 500-page executive summary on CIA torture. It revealed that CIA Director George Tenet wasn't even informed until months after the capture. When he found out, Tenet reportedly shouted, "Are you fucking kidding me? We grabbed the wrong guy and nobody told me." Even the architects eventually admitted it. Jose Rodriguez, who ran the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, confessed in his memoir that El-Masri was a case of mistaken identity. Alfreda Bukowski, who'd signed the original rendition order, reportedly told colleagues, "It was my call. I got it wrong. But I'd rather grab 10 innocent men than miss one terrorist." That math, 10 innocent lives sacrificed for one possible threat. That's the equation that built the salt pit. El-Masri survived. But what happened to the other prisoners who heard his screams through the walls? And 20 years later, did anyone who tortured an innocent man ever face a single consequence? Gul Rahman died in cell 3 of the salt pit on November 20, 2002, 13 months before El-Masri arrived. The 34-year-old Afghan was left naked from the waist down, chained to a concrete floor in 36-degree cold. Guards found his body in the morning, frozen in a fetal position. The CIA officer responsible received no punishment. Instead, he earned a $2,500 bonus 4 months later for consistently superior work. A 2004 CIA Inspector General report found that of 119 detainees in the rendition program, at least 26 were wrongfully held. That's 1 in 5. The report noted this was likely an undercount since many files were incomplete or missing. We know about El-Masri because he survived, because he talked, because someone listened. How many didn't? The architects of the rendition program faced no consequences. George Tenet received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Jose Rodriguez became a conservative media commentator. Alfreda Bukowski continued rising through CIA ranks. The officers who beat El-Masri, who chained him to floors, who forced tubes down his throat, they remain unknown, protected by secrecy, collecting government pensions. The salt pit closed in 2004, shortly after El-Masri's release. The building still stands in Kabul, abandoned again, its basement cells flooded with groundwater. Local children play soccer in the courtyard, unaware of what happened in the darkness below. The CIA never officially acknowledged Cobalt existed. The legal framework that enabled El-Masri's disappearance remains intact. The state secrets privilege still shields kidnappers. The aircraft companies still operate. The black site blueprints still exist. The personnel who ran them still hold clearances. El-Masri lives in Austria now, still suffering from PTSD. His marriage survived but remains strained. His children grew up with a father who disappears into panic attacks, who can't tolerate darkness, who wakes screaming from nightmares about concrete cells. In 2021, he gave his last interview. They stole 5 months of my life, but really they stole all of it. I'm still in that cell. Part of me never left.